The MCU timeline could be a little tricky. So Marvel came out with an official timeline book that I picked up, and we are going to go over the entire MCU timeline in a more TLDR version. Now, if you want this book, it's called Marvel Studios, Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Official Timeline. It's on Amazon, Target, and pretty much anywhere that sells books. Now, it's a big old book, but in the back of the book, pages 330 to 341, if you have the book, it gives you sort of a shortened version of the entire timeline, mapped out and easier to understand. Well, at least easier for me to understand. But anyway, this book only goes up to the Guardians Christmas special. So it won't include Guardians 3, The Marvels, or Loki Seasons 2, but we're going to talk about it too. Now, without further ado, let's just jump right into the book. So we start with the Eternals in year 5000 BCE. They arrive on Earth. About 4,425 years later, in 575 BCE, they stop the Deviants from attacking Babylon, which we saw in the scene in the Eternals, and has actually had some pretty good action in it. In the year 400, Circe and Icarus get married. 1,121 years later, they defeat the last of the Deviants, and the Eternal story is kind of put on hold for a while. We go over to the gods, where we see Odin and the famous battle against the Frost Giants, where he defeats them and finds an abandoned Frost Giant baby, which he will adopt and name Loki. Odin soon then makes a truce with the Frost Giant leader, and they have peace. We see the events on Thor 1. These events all play out in the year 965. Now, this is where things start to get jumbled together by year rather than story, so we'll be talking to it as it happens each year rather than following the character's story. In the year 1943, Steve Rogers was finally accepted into the army and chosen to take part in the super soldier experiment. On June 22nd, the experiment is successful and makes him a super soldier. However, right after this happens, the Doctor is assassinated by Hydra. Steve Rogers takes on the mantle of Captain America, but doesn't really do much with it until November, when Bucky Barnes and the 107th are imprisoned by Hydra. So Steve disobeys orders and attacks the prison, freeing his best friend and the rest of the company. Now, they go on a few missions together, but it isn't until the mid-1940s where Bucky Barnes falls off a train and is presumed dead by America. As we see, that's not the real end of his story, but we will get to that many, many years later. March 1945, Captain America finally defeats the Hydra leader Red Skull and captures the Tesseract. As we know, Red Skull will be banished to Vormir guarding the Soul Stone. In the same battle, Captain America crashes the Hydra plane in the Arctic ice where he is presumed dead, but as we know from the after credit scene in Captain America First Avenger, he is just frozen in ice. Over to the year 1989, Hank Pym will resign from S.H.I.E.L.D. because of the fear they are copying his size particle machine. In the same year, Carol Danvers and Dr. Lawson are attacked by aliens where the Doctor is killed and Carol is taken to their planet. In 1991, the mysterious Winter Soldier under Hydra's orders will complete a mission and kill Tony Stark's parents, Howard and Maria Stark. Their murder is covered up just as a car accident, and Obadiah Stane will take over Stark Industries in the meantime. To pause for a second, we see a bunch of storylines happen in the same year, even in the same month, but this will only get more in scale as the stories go on. Following the Black Panther story for a second, in 1992, King T'Chaka learns a horrible truth that his brother has been stealing vibranium and selling it from Wakanda to the outside world. When confronted, his brother tried to kill T'Chaka's friend, who was spying on him, but T'Chaka makes the split decision to shoot his brother, leaving his son Eric Killmonger alone. In 1993, not much happened, but Ivan Vanka was sentenced to prison in Russia. 2 years later, in 1995, Carol Danvers comes back to Earth and realizes the truth about herself and unlocks her full power and aids the Skrull on the battle against the Kree. Years later, in 1999, Tony Stark stands up a disabled scientist at a New Year's Eve party. A lot of these events may just be setting up future events. For example, the last one with Tony Stark. Like I said, we aren't going by movie or character, but instead just strictly by the year. Now, according to this book, the Hulk storyline is a little shaky, where it says somewhere in the mid-2000s, Bruce Banner is exposed to gamma radiation, becoming the Hulk. If you didn't know, the Incredible Hulk movie had the actor Edward Norton, but after some issues with the studios, he was recast and introduced later as Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk. So it's a little shaky with that timeline. Now we head over to 2008. This was the year Iron Man 1 came out, launching the MCU. In the same year, Tony Stark was ambushed by the Ten Rings after presenting his new missile technology in Afghanistan. His life is saved by Dr. Yinsen. They create the Mark I Iron Man suit with a box of scraps, as we know. He then escapes his captors and announces he will cancel all military contracts at that time. In the springtime, it is revealed Obadiah is working with the Ten Rings and has an upgraded Mark I suit, and they fight until Tony kills him, later announcing his iconic line, "I am Iron Man." Nick Fury asks him to join the Avengers initiative, and we fast forward 2 years later to 2010. The events of Iron Man 2 take place. Nick Fury recruits Natasha Romanoff, or Black Widow, to spy on Tony Stark. Remember we brought up 1993 Ivan Vanko? Well, he's out, and he's after Tony Stark's Iron Man. Iron Man uses the Mark V suit to defeat him, but it turns out Tony is suffering from poisoning. However, Nick Fury puts Tony on house arrest, and in the meantime, James Rhodey, who was also recasted at this point, takes the Iron Man suit to Justin Hammer, who modifies it to the War Machine suit that he takes on. Eventually, Tony, James, James, Natasha, Nick, and Happy Hogan will kill Ivanko to end Iron Man 2. In the same year, 2010, we shoot over to the Hulk. He comes back to Culver University and battles General Ross and the soldier Emil Blonsky, who then takes an early version of the super soldier serum and combines it with Bruce Banner's blood and becomes the Abomination, until eventually the two face off in Harlem and see the Hulk defeating Abomination. Again, in the same year, we go back to Thor, who was banished by his father Odin. Odin puts the spell on the hammer that only people who are worthy can lift it. We meet Clint Barton, or Hawkeye, who is a SHIELD agent guarding the crash site of Thor's hammer. We also meet Jane Foster, Darcy, and Eric. Keep in mind, this also happens during the spring of 2010, so the world in the MCU might have been going crazy at that time, because the final event of springtime saw Thor fight the Destroyer after he attacked Earth. Thor becomes worthy by the end of the film and defeats him. Following the events of the Hulk, Sitwell tries to frame all the damage on the Hulk and make the Abomination the hero in the scenario, until Tony Stark steps in and Abomination remains in jail instead of being released. In 2011, which is the after credit scene for the first Avengers, Steve is released from the ice by S.H.I.E.L.D. 2012 spring is all where the first Avengers movie takes place. Loki, under Thanos' command, steals the Tesseract and uses it on Dr. Selvage and Hawkeye, sparking Black Widow to come in. Black Widow is tasked with recruiting Bruce Banner to the Hulk. Eventually, there's a standoff between Cap, Iron Man, and Black Widow against Loki and Clint, leading to Loki's surrender for the time being. That is until Thor arrives, being sent by Odin. Loki manages to escape their custody with the help of the mind-controlled S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, until Natasha is able to knock Clint unconscious, stopping the mind control. Loki in this process kills Agent Phil Coulson, thus uniting the Avengers. Hulk also returns to Earth to help, and then we get the Battle of New York. Loki opens a portal of Thanos' army. After fighting, Loki is eventually defeated by all 6 Avengers, and Iron Man makes a selfless sacrifice that he survives, ultimately redirecting a missile to space, preventing New York from exploding. The Tesseract is recovered, and Thor takes Loki and it back to Asgard. The next year, in the fall of 2013, we see another conflict in Asgard with Thor and the Dark Elves. Thor finds out his love interest, Jane Foster, is infected with the power of the ether. Until Thor is able to defeat the Dark Elves, and while Loki fakes his death, he shapeshifts to look like Odin and takes the throne, banishing Odin to Earth. They hand the ether over to the Collector, and this was all the events of Thor: The Dark World. Over to the third and final Iron Man movie, Iron Man 3. Tony has PTSD from New York. His projects are causing strain between him and Pepper, and the first bombing occurs, all in the winter of 2013. December 22nd, Happy Hogan falls into a coma, and December 23rd to December 24th, Tony Stark gives out his address and is blown up by the Mandarin. He is assumed dead, but escapes in a suit where Jarvis pilots him to Tennessee, where he meets Harley. After spending some time repairing his armor, he goes to Miami and stops the Mandarin. Christmas Eve and Christmas night, he and the Legion save Pepper Potts when she returns the favor and kills an infected Killian, saving Tony's life. War Machine also saves the kidnapped president. Tony gets surgery to remove the sharpener near his heart and gets rid of the arc reactor. Over to 2014 spring, we see Captain America meet Sam Wilson, soon to be Falcon. In this movie, Cap and Natasha carry out a movie that was made by Fury, who was worried S.H.I.E.L.D. was being infiltrated from within. Nick Fury fakes his death after an attack from Hydra S.H.I.E.L.D., and Cap, Falcon, and Black Widow go on the run. Cap finds out the Winter Soldier is his old friend Bucky Barnes, and eventually fights him until Bucky starts to remember and saves Steve from drowning. Still in the spring of 2014, we are introduced to the Maximoff twins, Wanda and Pietro, who are under Hydra's control. Over to the summer of 2014, we meet the Guardians of the Galaxy. Quill, Rocket, Groot, and Gamora all meet by being arrested by the Nova Corps, and they meet Drax the Destroyer in jail. They all escape and go to nowhere, where the Collector is, who has the Power Stone that Thanos wants. Nebula, Gamora's sister, and Thanos being Gamora's dad, Nebula passes the stone to Ronan, who will betray Thanos. That is until the Guardians band together and stop him using the Power Stone together. They end up leaving the stone behind with Nova Corps. They don't have too much time to celebrate, because in the fall of 2014, the Guardians are hired by the High Priestess of the Sovereign to kill a battery-eating monster. Their reward is a captured Nebula. However, in the process, Rocket steals from the Sovereign until a mysterious figure named Ego saves them. Turns out this entity is Quill's father. He is a godlike Celestial, where he found Quill's mother. He hired Yondu to get Quill, but Yondu never delivered him, so Ego's been searching for Quill until now. Nebula and Gamora actually have an alliance after discovering the bones of Ego's children. After they all find out his plan to take over the universe, they fight Ego's brain at the core of the planet. In the process, they get attacked by Sovereign drones, and the stolen batteries come in handy that they will use to blow up Ego's brain. Ego loses to them after telling Quill he placed a tumor in his mother's head. Yondu sacrifices himself and saves Quill from suffocating in space. Now, 2015 is where the movie Age of Ultron takes place. We start in the spring, and the Avengers attack a Hydra base and uncover Loki's staff and come into contact with the Maximoff twins briefly. They have a party after, where Tony's new AI Ultron bot becomes alive and instantly addresses humans as irredeemable. It attempts to destroy Jarvis and makes a body for itself. himself. This is not in the book, but at this moment is where Steve almost is able to pick up Thor's hammer. The party is interrupted by Ultron, who flees with Loki's scepter and goes to Sokovia, where the Maximoff twins are. The Avengers travel to South Korea to stop Ultron from making a vibranium body, where the Maximoff twins learn Ultron's plan and turn against him. Natasha is captured by Ultron. Tony and Bruce use the Mind Stone and Thor's hammer and create Vision, who was Jarvis until now. He easily proves his allegiance by being worthy and lifting Mjolnir. They go into the battle called Battle of Sokovia. Ultra tried to use the capital as a weapon, but is stopped by Avengers, killing Pietro, Wanda's brother, in the process. Natasha is saved, Ultron is defeated by Vision, and in the resolution, Hulk takes the Queen Jet and disappears and goes into an unknown destination. The new Avengers compound is opened up in upstate New York, and we see the new members Vision, Falcon, Wanda, and War Machine. In the summer of 2015, Scott Lang is released from jail after a 3-year sentence for theft. This is the first Ant-Man. Darren Cross unveils the new Yellow Jacket suit. Scott goes back to his old ways and robs Hank Pym's house, where he finds the Ant-Man suit and tries it on and shrinks down. After trying to give it back, Scott is arrested and sent back to jail, where he will meet Hank and ultimately will be gifted the suit because Hank orchestrated his heist to test Scott. Scott uses the suit to escape jail. He'll end up meeting Falcon, where he tries to infiltrate the Avengers compound for a device to stop Yellow Jacket, and then he will eventually fight Yellow Jacket after kidnapping his daughter. Scott discovers how to come out of the quantum realm at the end, and he'll also show a prototype for the Wasp suit. On February 2nd of 2016, Dr. Stephen Strange will get into a terrible car crash, damaging his hands. In the spring of 2016, we'll get Captain America Civil War. Cap, Falcon, Black Widow, and Wanda all fight Crossbones in Nigeria, but will accidentally kill innocent lives in the process after his suicide bomb. Tony Stark is confronted by a woman blaming the Avengers for her son's death in Sokovia. This affects Tony greatly. The UN makes the Sokovia Records, which will put the Avengers under government control. They have only 3 days to sign it or retire. In these days, Peggy Carter dies and Steve attends the funeral in London. We meet Zemo, who is on the hunt to destroy the Avengers from within. He plans to find the mission report from December 16th, 1991. Zemo then plants a bomb at a ceremony, killing people and T'Challa's father, T'Chaka. Bucky Barnes is framed for it. Because of this, T'Challa vows for revenge, and Steve and Sam try to locate Bucky before they are captured in Berlin for interrogation. Zemo finds a facility where all other Winter Soldiers are until he is captured by Steve and Sam. Hawkeye breaks Wanda out of the Avengers compound to join Cap and Sam, and also suggests Scott Lang to join Cap's team, while on Tony's side we see Black Widow, Vision, Black Panther, War Machine, and the new hero Spider-Man. They eventually have a battle in Germany, and Falcon, Hawkeye, Wanda, and Ant-Man are sent to the raft. Then Natasha lets Bucky and Steve escape, and Iron Man tracks them down, and they have a partnership to stop Zemo, where Zemo shows Tony that his parents were killed by Bucky and not a car accident. Zemo reveals that the Avengers were responsible for his family's death in Sokovia. After finding out Bucky killed his parents, we get a big fight between Iron Man and Steve and Bucky. They eventually defeat Tony, but Steve leaves the shield behind because Tony says it doesn't belong to him. Black Panther stops Zemo and captures him and gives sanctuary to Bucky and Wakanda. Scott and Clint are put under house arrest, and Hank Pym and Hope Van Dyne are on the run because of the Accords. In 2016, spring to summer, Natasha meets up with her sister Yelena, and they take down the Red Room, where all the widows were being groomed. We also meet Taskmaster here, and this is the movie Black Widow. Also in the summer of 16, the movie Black Panther takes place, and T'Challa defeats his cousin Killmonger for the throne after initially losing to him. Still in the summer of 2016, Steve and Natasha rescue Sam and Wanda from the raft, and Steve sends Tony a burner phone to call him if he ever needs him in the future. In the Spider-Man Homecoming movie, it takes place in the fall of 2016. Spider-Man defeats Vulture and is offered a spot in the Avengers from Tony, but ultimately declines. Following back with Doctor Strange in the fall of 2016, he learns of Kamar-Taj and travels to meet Mordo and the Ancient One, learning the mystic arts. In 2017, Strange tinkers with the Eye of Agamotto until he is attacked by the villain and is aided by his cloak of levitation. Right after this, the Ancient One battles her former apprentice and ends up being defeated and put into the hospital in critical condition. There's not enough to save her, and she tells Strange about using power from the Dark Dimension, and that Stephen Strange and Mordo must work together to defeat the ruler of the Dark Dimension, Dormammu. After this, Wong and other sorcerers battle the Ancient One's former apprentice in the Hong Kong Sanctum, but ultimately will lose. However, Doctor Strange uses the Eye of Agamotto, which is the Time Stone, to undo the destruction. They summon Dormammu to fight Strange, but Strange uses the Eye of Agamotto to trap Dormammu in an endless time loop, forcing him to retreat. After this, Mordo leaves the mystic arts because of hearing the Ancient One was using power from the Dark Dimension. Doctor Strange becomes the master of the New York Sanctum. In the fall of 2017, this is when Thor Ragnarok takes place. Thor sees Loki is alive when they go to find Odin. Unfortunately, he passes away. In doing so, Thor's sister, Odin's daughter, Hela, returns from exile to claim the throne and destroys Mjolnir. In the process, Thor and Loki head to the planet Sakaar, bar where they see Hulk and former Asgardian Valkyrie. We see the Hulk as a gladiator. While getting the gang back together, they decide to go to Asgard to fight and defeat Hela and save the Asgardians. They soon realize they cannot defeat Hela on their own, so they release Ragnarok, who ultimately destroys Asgard, which puts a stop to Hela. The Asgardians escape, but not for long, because we head over to the spring of 2018 where Infinity War takes place. Shooting over to the spring of 2018, Janet Van Dyne is saved from the quantum realm and reunited with her family, this being Ant-Man and the Wasp. Whilst the Ant-Man and the Wasp is taking place, Infinity War is as well. The Asgardian ship is taken over by Thanos and his forces, defeating Thor, Heimdall, and Hulk. Luckily, before the Hulk could get killed, Heimdall summons the Bifrost and sends Hulk back to Earth to notify the Avengers. Thanos kills Loki and takes the Space Stone and detonates the ship. When Bruce lands in New York, he warns Doctor Strange, Wong, and Iron Man about Thanos. After being defeated by Thanos, Bruce cannot engage with the Hulk anymore. Not being able to turn into the full-form Hulk, Spider-Man joins the battle and ends up on the spaceship of Ebony Maw with Iron Man and captured Doctor Strange. This is where we see Iron Man gift the Iron Spider suit to Peter Parker. The Guardians of the Galaxy find an unconscious floating Thor and rescue him. Thor, Rocket, and Groot go to the home of the dwarf blacksmiths for a new weapon for Thor. Corvus and Proxima attack Wanda and Vision in Scotland. They are unsuccessful when they are encountered by an attack from Cap, Black Widow, and Falcon. Back to the ship, Iron Man and Spider-Man rescue Doctor Strange, and Ebony Maw is casted out into space. Cap, Wanda, Vision, Black Widow, and Falcon all travel to Wakanda to join forces with Black Panther and Bucky Barnes. Over to the remaining Guardians of the Galaxy. They go to nowhere to go to the Collector for the Reality Stone. However, they are too late and Thanos got there first. Thanos overpowers them and captures Gamora, disappearing into a portal. Gamora agrees to go with Thanos to the Soul Stone to stop her sister from being tortured, where we see Red Skull guarding the stone. It is revealed in order to obtain the stone, you must sacrifice something you love. In this case, Thanos sacrifices his daughter, Gamora. The Guardians meet Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange, and they devise a plan to stop Thanos. This is where we get the famous "Why is Gamora" scene. Whilst this is going on, we get the battle in Wakanda, one of my favorite scenes in the movie. A massive battle between Thanos' Black Order and the Wakandan army takes place here as Shuri tries to work from detaching the Mind Stone from Vision. During the battle, Thor creates his axe using Groot's arm as a handle. He arrives at Wakanda to help aid Cap and Black Panther, another one of the best scenes in the movie, as well as the MCU. The Guardians and Iron Man fight Thanos and almost win until Star-Lord learns Gamora has been killed. Thanos ultimately wins the battle, and Doctor Strange gives up the Time Stone to spare Tony Stark's life. Thanos disappears through a portal to go to Earth, and next is the finale to the movie, The Snap. Thanos arrives in Wakanda, taking out everyone until Wanda has to make a sacrifice and destroy the Mind Stone from Vision's head, which would sadly destroy Vision as well. She is successful until Thanos uses the newly acquired Time Stone to rewind time and retrieve the Mind Stone from Vision's head, killing him in the process. Thanos now has all 6 stones, and before he can finish the job, Thor strikes him in the chest with Stormbreaker. Although we learn it's not enough to kill him, Thanos responds, "You should have gone for the head," snapping his finger and turning half the world's population and the universe to dust. In the after credit scene, Nick Fury and Maria Hill are snapped to dust only after Nick Fury is able to page Captain Marvel. Scott Lang gets stuck in the quantum realm because of the snap, which turns Hank, Hope, and Janet into dust, and we now have Endgame, which is still the spring of 2018. Iron Man and Nebula are rescued by Captain Marvel, and everyone who has survived the snap tried to ambush Thanos, but learn Thanos destroyed the stone, making sure his actions cannot be undone. Thor finally goes for the head this time and decapitates Thanos. Now that was only the start to Endgame, because this movie has a 5-year gap where nothing happens. This takes us to the year 2023, where luckily a rat, yes, a random rat, activates the quantum tunnel by stepping on it, releasing Scott Lang. We learn that 5 years has passed on Earth, but for Scott, only a few hours has passed. Scott reunites with his daughter Casey and explains that the quantum realm may have allowed time travel. Steve, Natasha, Scott try to get Tony Stark's help. After refusing for a bit, they finally give in and work with Bruce Banner to create an entryway to time travel. The Avengers create a plan to retrieve the Infinity Stones and undo the snap. Rocket and Bruce recruit Thor, who has fallen into a deep depression and let himself go. They also recruit Clint, Hawkeye, or in this moment, Rodan. This is where we get the time heist. Now keep in mind this all takes place in the fall of 2023. However, they will go back in time to a series of different events that I will further explain. Bruce, Cap, Scott, and Stark travel to 2012 in the Battle of New York, where they can retrieve the Time, Mind, and Space Stone. Bruce meets the Ancient One, reassuring her that he will bring back the Time Stone, stopping any other universe that could be created. Steve convinces Hydra agents that he is in Hydra and retrieves the Mind Stone, and in the process fights a past version of himself and wins. Scott and Tony do not retrieve the Space Stone, and 2012 Loki escapes with it. Steve and Tony travel back even further to New Jersey on April 4th, 1970 to retrieve the Tesseract. While this is happening, Thor and Rocket travel to Asgard in 2013 to retrieve the Reality Stone from Jane Foster. Thor reunites with his mother before her death, and also Mjolnir. Nebula and Rhodey travel back to 2014 and take the Power Stone before Peter Quill can. Nebula's current self intertwines with the past Nebula, alerting 2014 Thanos what exactly is happening. Finally, Clint and Natasha travel to Vormir to retrieve the Soul Stone, where Natasha sacrifices her life and getting the Soul Stone for Clint. In the book, Marvel labels this as the end of the blip. Bruce uses the Nano Gauntlet to reverse the snap and restore everyone back. Bruce brings everyone back but cannot bring back Natasha. Also in the process, leaves his right arm badly burnt. 2014 Nebula brings back 2014 Thanos and his army through the Quantum Tunnel, and he attacks the Avengers compound. Thanos' new plan is to wipe out the universe entirely and create a new one. We get an insane battle with Cap, Iron Man, and Thor against Thanos. The big three not being enough, we learn that Cap is worthy of Thor's hammer. We find out the snap has worked and returned all of the fallen. They all fight against Thanos' army. Captain Marvel joins the battle and brings Thanos' warship down. Even with the Avengers united, Thanos still gets the stones, and right before he can snap again, Tony steals the stones and sacrifices his life and snaps Thanos and his entire army away. They all have a funeral for Tony. Thor appoints Valkyrie as King of Asgard, and he joins the Guardians of the Galaxy. Steve uses the Quantum Tunnel and returns the stones and Thor's hammer to their right times, and in the process lives out his life with Peggy Carter. He returns an elderly man and passes the shield to Sam with the support of Bucky. Now under this, on the official timeline, it's just labeled TVA. With a 2012 variant, Loki gets captured by the TVA and hunts a rogue Loki variant. In the process, at the end of time, He Who Remains is killed, destroying the timeline. These are the events of Loki Season 1. In the same year, 2023, we get the show WandaVision. Wanda Maximoff creates a small town called Westview and lives her life as a sitcom there, with a newly created Vision and 2 children of their own. As the events transpire, she reverses the spell and transforms into the Scarlet Witch. Shang-Chi travels to the secret realm where he gains the powers of the 10 Rings. This introduced in the Shang-Chi movie. In the summer, around 8 months after the blip ending, Peter is sent on a 2-week trip to Europe, meeting Mysterio and defeating him, but in the process having his identity revealed to the world, being the movie Far From Home. In the spring into summer of 2024, Sam Wilson defeats the Flag Smashers with the help of Bucky Barnes and officially takes on the Captain America role, introduced in the show Falcon and the Winter Soldier. In the fall, we get the She-Hulk show. Lawyer Jennifer Walters transforms into She-Hulk. The Celestial Emergence is halted at this time as well. Then introducing No Way Home in 2024, Peter uses a spell from Doctor Strange to erase everyone's memory of Peter Parker being Spider-Man. In doing this, he brings Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and his enemies, as well as Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and his enemies, to Earth 616. Ultimately, in the process, losing Aunt May and casting another spell that will make everyone forget who Peter Parker is entirely. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, where we see Doctor Strange take on Wanda while she's in search for her kids. And this is where we also see the beginning of the multiverse. In the winter of 2024, we get the Hawkeye show, which introduces Kate Bishop, Echo, and Kingpin into the MCU. Finally, the year 2025, Jennifer Walter balances her life as a superhero lawyer and it stops a plan that will steal her blood and abilities. This takes place from the spring to fall. In the spring, we meet Mark Spector, who becomes Moon Knight in his show as well. Continuing with this timeline, there's a war between Wakanda and Namor, where the newly knighted Black Panther Shuri defeats him, also revealing T'Challa has a son. Moving on to the fall of 2025, we are introduced to Kamala Khan, who's possibly the first mutant in the MCU. We get the 4th installment in the Thor movie, Thor Love and Thunder, where Thor and Mighty Thor, who is Jane Foster, fight Gore the God Butcher, where we see Jane die, where we see Thor adopt Gore's younger daughter. Finally, the last section in the book, the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. The Guardians bring some holiday cheer to Peter Quill, and it's revealed to us that Mantis is his sister. Now, the book only covers up to that moment. As we know, the MCU timeline has still continued past this point, within Phase 5 introducing Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, where Ant-Man fights Kang the Conqueror. We get the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, where some of the Guardians venture off, and we are introduced introduced to some new Guardians. Next, we have the latest movie, The Marvels, including Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, and Monica Rambeau. And finally, Loki Season 2, where we have Loki become the god who watches over the multiverse. Anyway, like I said, the book does not cover that part of the MCU. However, I wanted to just give little snippets of what we have right now. I just want to remind you guys, this is just a synopsis of the MCU timeline from the book. We'd be here for days with a full detailed rundown of the entire book, so I just went with the synopsis for now. But if you're interested, you could purchase this book relatively anywhere and get more in-depth details of what I did not cover in this video. Now, if you made it to the end of the video, I want you to comment your favorite MCU movie, or even your top 3 or even top 5 MCU movies. Give me a list. I want to hear what you guys think. My top 3 would have to be Endgame, Infinity War, and Civil War, but I would love to hear what everyone else's favorites are. I had a lot of fun making this video. Please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all on the next one. Have an incredible day.